It will be a challenge to work with such a diverse community across the United States. American Latinos are not monolithic. We're a diverse group, but we also share so much in common. And when you walk through this exhibit today here, the Molina Gallery, you'll realize that we have a lot of shared experiences that will bring us together.
Jorge, what is your outlook for the next year with reference to curating the content? Are you going to have this exhibit for a certain time? Do you know how long this exhibit's going to be around?
The Presente exhibit in the Molina Gallery will be up for about 2.5 years, and this gallery will rotate out about 3 or 4 times, and all building up to the National Museum of the American Latino being finished. So we're looking at a 10 to 12 year span here. But during that time, this exhibit will be able to present themes and topics that we can experiment with to see what we want to include in a larger museum.
Will there be parallel exhibits that will be traveling throughout the country separate from this, or will this be the front and center of, because the Smithsonian has a unit that does traveling Smithsonians. Are you guys integrating into that, or is this your focal point?
Right now, this gallery is our focal point. The Smithsonian does have a sites exhibit program that travels other shows with Latino topics, but we're looking to do partnerships with museums throughout the United States to try to integrate some of our content there and form those tight partnerships that will help collaborations moving along.
In terms of how you created this content, tell us a little bit about some top line numbers. How many artifacts are there? Did you already own the majority of it? Like, what percentage of this did you already have inside the Smithsonian? How much was borrowed?
Yeah. This exhibit is a combination of items borrowed from other Smithsonian institutions, the American Indian Museum, National Museum of American History. We borrowed items from other institutions, including History Miami Museum, where I used to work. And then other items that we started collecting. We have a few items that have come in the past year.
Would you say that this exhibit is a statement of what you would like to launch with? Like, would it be safe to say that what you're seeing here is not only a preview of the kinds of exhibits you'll have, but of actual items that will definitely be once we have this 10 or 12 years from now?
The exhibit you see today here, opening up at American History, is a 101. It's a general survey of American Latinos in history in the United States. And we'll build on that and have more specific themes and topics over the next few years.
But you're not sure what percentage of this might make it to a final museum?
Right, we're not sure what percentage will make it to a final museum yet. We're gonna pick out the best things, the best stories that resonate with bigger audiences, larger audiences, and then kind of fine tune from there. And it'll be a much bigger museum once we do open, so we could have an amazing variety of objects and exhibits.
So tell me about 3 items that you think stand out from this exhibit. I know it's hard. It's like asking a parent to talk about their kids. But what are 3 items that you think stand out and would probably be your anchor items of, when you talk about the American History Museum, we talk about Lincoln's top hat and stuff like that. What would be the top hat here? Of course, Celia Cruz's dress. But outside of that, tell us in your words.
Outside of Celia Cruz's dress, I think a couple of items that stand out and stories that stand out really are about the early ties to indigenous cultures, people that were here before U.S. occupancy, before European explorers, who came in contact with European explorers. That's important. It's important to listen to the stories about Mexico and how the border, they didn't cross the border crossed them. That's really important concept that most people don't realize, how over 100,000 people became citizens and many of them were actually deported after that. So that's an important story. We have really strong stories about immigration, including a Cuban raft. And towards the back of the exhibit, people are gonna really be astounded. It's a small raft, came with 2 people on it, but it ties into immigration stories across the nation. And also the Pedro Pan story. We're very familiar with Miami. Over 14,000 kids that come from Cuba unaccompanied from 1960 to 62 without their parents. And they were sent in search of freedom to not be in this new government took over the country, the island. And that's important because that ties into relations today with child exodus, including in the Ukraine, parents making the difficult decision to send their kids out of the country to save them. So it's important how we tie in these stories to national and international stories.
And you have a limited space, but were you able to capture at least one item or more that relates to all of the nationalities that you are tasked with representing? Can we say, if you come to the Molina Gallery, there's something for Bolivians, something for that is a nod to Colombia. Does that happen, or is that do you have a plan to include more? If you didn't, what's your
Yeah,
answer
it's almost
to that?
impossible to capture all communities in the United States that have Latin American ancestry. So what we've done is we've picked topics and items that are cross generational, that are cross country, that people can relate to. And as we build new exhibits in the future, we'll try to replace those items and rotate them out. Even in this exhibition, in the next 6 months, due to conservation issues, we'll rotate some of the garments out, some of the fabrics, to see other things. For instance, we have Celia Cruz dress now, but in the next rotation, you might have Walter Mercado's cape. So, that
Right, we would know where that came from, right?
So it's that kind of, rotations that make it fresh and brings new content in.
Final question, and I know you have to get going. With regards to curating this, how many items are there right now? Do you know if there's like 5,000 items, 200?
In this exhibition right now, we have about a few hundred items on display, but due digital media and content displays there, you can do a deeper dive and get a lot more research done that way. There's Pew Research and data that helps on demographics.
Right.
There's 12 biographies, storytellers, where you can click through and listen to their content one-on-one. So there's many other ways to engage in the exhibit.
Okay, and what message would you have for people that are going to take a first look at this, Latinos that are all going to come here looking for themselves? You're obviously evolving, and this is your first take on it. Tell us a little bit about, what you need from the community. What message would you have for Latino leaders and the community at large?
I think the main message is for people to come with an open mind, and not a bias, not their interpretation of what being Latino means. And when they experience this exhibit and the stories being told, they will realize that the differences are much less than the commonalities.